Monday Night War Room. My name is Kyle Senra. As always, we've got Dan the B League, Gladys Louise Taylor, and the Fantasy Sports Doc, Jim Ferretti. How's everyone doing?
Doing really well, Kyle. Thanks.
Could be in a better mood. We're all great.
I'm good. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, I'm certainly, there's certain players that are injured right now that are also probably not in the greatest moods because of their injuries. So I know that's kind of the big focus. So is there any players that anyone wants to kind of start talking about in terms of injuries? Just get right into it because there's so many.
Let's do Ronald Jones first because I have Fournette.
Yeah.
Ronald Jones.
And I also have Ronald Jones, so that helps me too.
And his broken pinky finger.
Yeah. So this one kind of snuck up on us, I think. I didn't hear anything about this until this afternoon. And it turns out, so Bruce Arians says that his pinky might be broken. It's like I kind of feel like he can do better than that. But it sounds like my guess is if they're saying that it might be broken, it probably is. The question is, how much of an issue that's going to be. And whether or not it's going to be something that's going to hold him out. And at this point, I don't know. It's pretty conceivable that he could play with a broken, even if they put a pin in it, they can just cast it up and he can play with it. It has happened before. But it's one of those things where Fournette now all of a sudden becomes really relevant again because this thing could go bad or, they could decide to hold out Jones because they want him to get healthy for the playoffs potentially. And then all of a sudden you've got Fournette, who is essentially left for dead, now becomes very relevant.
Yeah. So Shady McCoy, he was for the season. Was he a healthy scratch?
Pretty much.
Or hadn't he been injured?
Yeah, he really hasn't played at all.
Right until yesterday when Fournette was a healthy scratch. But
right.
Was Shady McCoy? Was he a healthy scratch all season, or is he suffering from an injury?
He's been out all week.
Yeah, to my knowledge, he's not hurt. He's just not playing.
If I can jump in on this one, we're looking at Atlanta in week 15 and Detroit week 16. So you're looking at two massive positive matchups for the run game for Tampa. And you're looking at either you would think that if it was Ronald Jones, he would be going nuts. It could be a concoction of Fournette, Vaughn, and McCoy at this point. So those matchups couldn't be better for a running back in the fantasy playoffs.
I know. It's the only reason I held on to Fournette. I always feel like whenever these coaches speak, I go back to Monty Python. It's just it's a flesh wound. It's just a flesh wound, and they're like,
yeah, you got it. That's it. I mean, that's basically it.
I think without laughing about this too much, it's not like we're relying on Ronald Jones in the receiving game anyway. So catching a ball isn't something that we should have to worry about him. You'd think pass protection is going to kill him, though. But we've seen Arians absolutely ice him once before. If we remember last year, he missed one coverage, and that was it. He sat the whole game. So we'll see what happens. It could be just like goal line carries for him, and that might be it if he's still able to go.
I'm going to need you to stop saying that again because I have Fournette. So let's just stop talking like that.
I think 2-1. Yeah, I think 2-1 have Jones over Fournette. So I think we need Jones to play next week. So I think we need this to happen.
I am looking at snap counts for the running backs, and early in the season, McCoy played 36%, 18%, 16%, 29% in week 6, and then nothing. 4% of the snaps in week 10, 2% of the snaps right before the bye week. So it seems like he's been there just active, not playing, active or maybe inactive on game days. But yeah, I don't think it's injury related necessarily. Although it is curious because that same week where McCoy's last game where he saw significant time was the game where Fournette was hurt. And that was the last time we saw any of Keyshawn Vaughn either on offense. So.
Oh, Bruce Arians. Okay, so let's move on to Matthew Stafford and his rib injury, which I think
right.
It's that time.
Yeah, exactly. So
I can feel it.
I think the good news is Yeah. I think the thing is that if you have Matthew Stafford, the good news I've been dealing with, you've been prepared for this for weeks because he had the thumb thing, and then he was in, and he was going to be out, and then he maybe injured it again, and we're well past the expiration date on Matthew Stafford's typical season. So at this point, you got to feel like anything is gravy. But the nature of this injury, he injured his ribs. And the question is it broken or not? And the x-rays as of right now are pending, but the issue is that even if the ribs are not broken, you can still tear your cartilage, which is in the front of the rib cage, which is because that allows the rib cage to expand and so you can breathe. But the bad part is that it doesn't show up on x-rays. It's really, really painful. And it takes longer to heal typically because cartilage just doesn't, in some cases when it tears, it doesn't, the blood flow isn't as good to cartilage as is the bone, and all those good healing factors and all the things that make you, put you back together again, don't get in there. So this is something that could bother him, not just for this week, but potentially going forward, even if they say, oh, x-rays are negative. That's not actually good news. It could still be a major problem for him. So we just have to wait and see on this one. By all accounts, he's in a pretty significant amount of pain. We're getting to the point where what else does Detroit have to prove? It's that part of the season where we're going to be saying this a lot. What else do they have to prove? Are they really going to run him out there if he's in pain and if he's at risk for, getting hurt further? And then you could potentially end up with a Drew Brees situation where he's got multiple fractured ribs, punctured lung, and all that jazz. So that's on the table too if they run him back out there and he's already injured.
Okay. So want to stick with the quarterbacks and go to Alex Smith?
Yeah.
Comeback player of the year.
Yeah, comeback player of the year, and right on cue, he injures his surgically repaired leg again. The good news is it doesn't look like it's that bad. Certainly not as bad as his initial injury, but in the grand scheme of things, not that bad either. When they took x-rays, it showed that there wasn't any break, and all the hardware and all the stuff that they put in there was where it was supposed to be, which is good. And they're calling it a calf strain. So given the fact that he's not apparently in a lot of pain, thinking it's a grade 1 low grade injury. Not to say that he couldn't miss this week, but if I had to hazard a guess, I think he'll be back out there. It's not too dissimilar to I think it's less severe than what we saw with Hendricks, where he kind of pulled his calf and missed that week and the week after. Right. Brudry should be a sports bar Nola. Yeah, that's right. Well, I should copyright that so I can get some royalties.
That's Dan, our one of the Thursday night.
Thank
hosts.
you, Dan. Appreciate that.
And I mean, I'm surprised he didn't make any harsher comments about the Saints, considering his Eagles just beat them. So, which I guess that's the news being over, right? The Eagles beat the Saints somehow with Jalen Hurts.
The Jalen Hurts Eagles beat the Saints.
I'm sure we'll talk about that after the injuries. I'm guessing, but just we'll because Dan made such a great comment. We'll dig at the Saints right off the bat, Dan, for you right there. I mean, the Eagles don't have too many victories. You got to take them when you can, right?
They still fell.
Wow.
I forgot them. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, we'll forget about this conversation. Let's get to the injuries again. So one thing Dan, you just brought to our attention. I don't know if it's breaking news. It is to me. So, but I'll let you break it to all of our listeners.
Yeah. So we're just seeing now Deebo Samuel's ruled out for the rest of the regular season. So I'm guessing that hamstring they're throwing him on the IR. That's going to be him out 15, 16, 17 weeks. Weeks 15, 16, and 17, and that is them. So that's great news if you have Brandon Ayuk or Jordan Reed. That's huge. But for those who have Deebo Samuel again, they're being let down by this man and his hamstrings one more time, which is quite apropos for 2020 and Deebo Samuel, which is a shame. That severity of his hamstring, he must have been out for it felt like 2 months. Is that about right?
Yeah, it is. If it's a partial tear and it's sounding like he either partially tore it again or he completely tore it and they knew right off the bat, and it's what we were going to talk about. Anytime, as Glenn kind of alluded to, the Monty Python thing, where they say, "Oh, it's a flesh wound." In the meantime, the guy's dragging his arm behind him. They came out and said right away, "This was a significant injury," and that's a quote. This is a significant injury. If they say in the NFL, basically you're almost dead. That showed that it was, the presumption was he was going to be out for a really long time. Not surprising that he's out for the season. And that actually brings us to another hamstring injury, Jakeem Grant on Miami, who, left the game, and it looks like he's been listed as week to week, which we've talked about day to day before. Like day to day doesn't really mean anything. We're all day to day. The converse of that is if somebody's listed as week to week, that's almost always really bad. So the chances of him coming back this week are really low. He could be out kind of along the same timeline, like Deebo Samuel type situation, where he's just out potentially for the rest of the fantasy season and longer. So that's the situation with that.
Didn't a rash of injuries? Didn't
the Dolphins have like 3 injuries? Didn't Gesicki go out too?
Yeah, Gesicki's out.
Yeah.
Devontae Parker left. And then, Salvin Ahmed missed last game. Miles Gaskin missed the game on the COVID
Preston
list.
Walker's been out for about 3 months, it feels like. Just for what it's worth, 49ers, you might want to check out Richie James or Kendrick Bourne or whoever they have there. Week 15 for the playoffs, they play Dallas. So that is something, or for those, if you are someone who has Mike Gesicki, who I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute.
Yeah.
You might want to look at Jordan Reed going forward as well. So that could be an option, a pass catching option he's done all right recently, or well enough, as much as a tight end can. So that's something you might want to check out as well if you're someone that has Samuel and still want to get a piece of those 49ers as well.
Didn't Shanahan say he thinks Kettle's going to be practicing this week, though?
I mean, would you really want to risk the guy that you just – how much money did they drop on George Kittle? I don't think it's worth bringing him back. But, Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers, they're going to do what they do. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't risk bringing him back if you're not a playoff. Can they still make the playoffs? What, 5 wins?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
they're
they'd have
not
to
that far out of it.
They'd have to win out and hope someone bombs. And they're still what? They're on equal wins as the Giants with 5.
And they don't get to just go in as division winners. So.
And look, you're looking at that's it. Well, I mean, to be fair, 6 wins at worst had Washington or the Giants at 6 wins in playoff hunt. That's a game back from where that would be a game ahead of where Washington, San Fran is. So, but there is
a slim chance 2 NFC East teams make the playoffs. That is that if
that's not going to happen. One, it looks like Washington. I'd be surprised if they slip. They got a soft schedule. I think they play Philadelphia in there as well. So, they should be right.
But I also wonder if there's replacements on the Dolphins. But I guess, Jim, we'll get to the injuries specifically first. So Gesicki is the shoulder and Parker a leg injury. So.
Yeah. Jason out there kind of got the scoop. So the really interesting thing out of all this, Gesicki is already not looking good for this. They already said the fear is he'll miss 1 game again. Like what we've talked about before, it's like there's unrealistic optimism in the NFL. And just to kind of underscore what we were talking about, just let's analyze the sentence that we've been talking about. George Kittle might practice this week. I mean, if that isn't the most non-committal, wishy-washy, way to say that something, may or may not happen. With guys like that, Rashad Penny in Seattle, with Pete Carroll looking at the injury world through rose-colored glasses. George Kittle may be coming back. They said they might practice this week. It's like let's see them actually practice first, and then we can start worrying about whether or not we're going to play them or want to even consider playing them. So that's kind of where we are with that. Gesicki's looking like he's going to be out at least in game. We don't know the nature of the injury yet. It could be a break. It could be his labrum. It could be a rotator cuff. It could be his AC joint. It could be some or all of the above. It looked like he was in a lot of pain. And if they're already kind of saying that they're worried about him missing a game, that's not a good sign. There may be more to come on that. And With Devontae Parker, we're just not sure. Just not sure what's going on. It looks like he's injured of the three, but that may that may not be a great. But really, the whole thing out of this, the guy that really becomes interesting is Lynn Bowden, who may have running back eligibility in some leagues. I know in CBS he does, and that's very interesting because he had a really good game. And seemed to be like the pass catching, kind of took the lead in the pass catching role, and that he may even get some carries too, because that whole backfield is Russian roulette at this point.
He could even get a pass in there as well. He's quarterback. He was the quarterback in college, right? So he's that about him as well. Bowden 9-7.
In the Chiefs game, they did try and set him up as one, and then he took it and run, but it shows they're willing to use it. You're right.
So Bowden 9-7, 82. Mac Hollins was the next man up, 9-5, 66. So there's two guys there, and you'd think that Adam Shaheen, who's capable, he's normally out there enough, he would be capable there to fill in for Mike Gesicki. He's not as athletic, but he is a big boy, and he can get the odd red zone grab. So they'd be the three guys you think would be up, but Bowden has to be with that dual. If he's dual eligible, he's got to be the number one pickup.
Yeah, so thanks, Jason. Thanks, George. Yeah, Bowden, Shaheen. Do we even go to venture with Antonio Callaway, knowing his upside and the situations he's been in? And if he get an opportunity, we think he could produce this coming week.
I've been burnt by the Antonio Callaway flame too much.
Who hasn't?
I'm out on that one. I'll let someone else bomb their money, but I think Bowden's the guy you want. He has got to be.
Yeah.
You're going to trust DeAndre Washington at 13 for 35, and then Patrick Laird. So even their run game, you can't really trust, and we're probably thinking Gaskins is probably going to miss another one, right? So
that's what it's looking like.
Yeah. So if he's going to miss another one, listen, the matchup against New England this week for the Dolphins might not be that appealing either, but they do play the Raiders, I think, week 16. So if you are confident enough to think that you can get a guy to even look, it's a 2-game playoff now, isn't it? With most games already being done and dusted.
Yeah.
If you think you can get a guy and stash onto your bench for that 1 week upside, because the Raiders are absolutely atrocious at this point.
I would concur with that.
Yeah, if the Falcons are dropping 43 on them, and then whatever happened with the Jets last week, and now the Colts, they can't stop a thing. So if you think the Dolphins are a chance to put up a big game against the Raiders, you want a piece of that, and Bowden or Hollins even at this point, they'd be guys you want to get on your roster at this point.
Okay, so the Raiders play the Chargers this week, and Mike Williams went out with a back injury, I think.
Yeah, it's Thursday too, right? So quick turnaround.
He's always out with a back injury.
Wait, what?
Always out with a back injury. That's what stopped his career at the start, right? The back injury.
Oh, Mike Williams? I don't know.
Always out with a back injury. Mike Williams. What a shame.
Yeah, so it looked like he left the game.
I actually feel bad to me being sincere. I actually feel bad for him. That was sincere, Dan. That was emotional.
And he didn't have any action before that either. It looks like he wasn't targeted before he left the game. I don't think you could trust him even if he does play this week. The guys that kind of stepped up for him, Tyron Johnson and maybe even Jalen, could become interesting because that quarterback over still sling it, and he's going to sling it to somebody. And I saw that Keenan Allen even had a questionable tag. I'm not reading too much into that. I didn't see an actual injury. I don't know what that's all about. It may just be a veteran rest day. But certainly something to continue to monitor. I'm not really too worried about it at this point and haven't heard anything bad. But, we're getting to that point in the season where it's basically this is where, again, I really want to caution people to take extra care to not, plug in the guys that who may be hurt, because if they either underperform because they're injured, if they play a decoy role and you don't know about it, or if they leave the game with an injury, it's really tough to come back from that. I mean, I would almost always want to start Buddy, who I know is healthy and is going to have a role, even if I've never heard of him before, potentially, and take my chances, as opposed to going with somebody who might be injured or coming back off an injury, like James Conner, for example. James Conner almost terminated my playoff hopes yesterday because it was Conner versus Stephon Diggs, and Conner only got 18 more yards than I did, and Stephon Diggs almost dropped a 40-burger on me. So it got really dicey there, and I almost felt like I should have known better. And he looked like he was running in quicksand. Yeah, right. He looked like he was running in quicksand. I don't know what you thought about it, Gladys.
He hasn't looked good all year, but he looked especially bad, and he looked especially perplexed that he was looking bad. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
a couple of those runs, he was like, kind of like Deontay Johnson when he dropped a couple balls, looking at his hands, like, well, it's like their body parts failing them, and they don't understand why they're failing.
Yeah.
James Conner is with 2 losses in a row. James Conner is I don't know if it's the COVID. I don't know if it's just this season. I wouldn't start him. I wouldn't play him. Jalen Samuels, I would put in there. Although, quite honestly, I'm not really convinced that any Pittsburgh running back is worth a shot in the playoffs. I think I know that we were talking about Conner, but I meant to ask you why you were talking about playing a player who just came off injury. Do you think that's what happened with Josh Jacobs? Because
Josh Jacobs.
Well, he was coming off that ankle injury.
I don't know what happened with that. All I know is that about 12:45 or sometime afternoon, my Twitter blew up because he said he wasn't playing after he had been activated, and then it turned out he was just like pulling a gag on us or whatever. I don't know what to make of that. But as far as his ankle, I know we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, and we never really got any clarification as to what the severity of the injury was, whether it was kind of a garden variety ankle sprain versus a high ankle sprain. I still suspect that it was of a garden variety ankle sprain, and he's as good as he felt pretty good. They were able to tape it up, numb it up, and get him out there. I think some of that might have been game flow, and the Raiders on offense, they're basically one Tecmo Bowl Hail Mary touchdown away from losing 4 in a row, and they needed it against a winless team. Like, they are really not looking good. So, they wanted him to catch the ball more this year. That hasn't really happened. I don't know what to make of that at this point. As far as him being injured, I don't think his injury had as much to do with it as maybe the way the game played out. We'll have to see going into this week if he's really limited in practice or if he misses a few practices after Wednesday. Oh, wait, they play Thursday or no?
Yeah, they do play Thursday.
They do, okay. So, yeah, then we're going to know quick, because if he's out of practice, tomorrow, then we got a problem with him. If not, then we can.
Are you?
Go, Colin, I'm sorry.
Okay, sorry. No, it's my fault for interrupting. Just at what point are you sitting him if he's active? Like, what are the conditions? Like, if he doesn't practice at all this week and they just hold him for game time, and they start him without any practice, are you confident starting him?
Well, the one thing is it kind of comes down to what your situation is, on your team. So it becomes a question of what other options do you have? Can you pick? Is there somebody out there that you can pick up? Is it something where you get like Leonard Fournette and now he's looking like he's going to start because Jones is out? Like, that becomes more appealing. Last week, Frank Gore and Ty Johnson were kind of neck and neck, and that game was a disaster anyway. But they both ended up playing because Gore came back and played with his concussion. If he was out, Ty Johnson was looking very appealing to start. So you can have those type of situations that manifest themselves. We just don't know about it yet. But if you don't have that and he is playing, it looked like he was kind of guy. I think it was more game flow than it was actual injury. So I think he's back for the most part. If he's practicing and everything is copacetic and he's not throwing out any more shade on Twitter, then I think you can use him as you normally would. And he's potentially a first round pick or a late first, early second this year. So that there's something for having him out there. I hope that answers the question.
Well, yeah, I think it does, and I think I've kind of leaned that as well. That if he's healthy enough to play even without practicing much, it's still one of those where I think last week it's game scope, but also the game flow or game script, game glow, with the glowing comment there. But the matchup, I mean, the Colts are one of the best defenses in the league, if not maybe the best defense in the league. So not getting out the Chargers. So that's
that probably had a lot to do with it. Probably had a lot to do with it.
I guess there's a few more players injured.
So, Russian roulette backfield, but I'll leave it to you. Yeah, tell me.
Anyone want to talk about?
Literally ready for anything.
I got one here. I've just seen this pop up. Kyle Shanahan reveals that Raheem Mostert will have further imaging on his ankle. So we're talking about, again, we just spoke about Deebo Samuel and a plus matchup against Dallas. Dallas, I mean, even Travion Williams had 40 yards rushing on him this week, and Smart JP run was half a thing for the Bengals. So we're talking about maybe Jeff Wilson. This is a game where, again, we're talking about where CJ Anderson won people championships. We went over this last week, so Jeff Wilson could be that guy. Guy if most of it's out. If a coach sends someone back for imaging, what are you expecting?
Just that the guy in pain, and it may or may not show anything. It looked like he was okay during the game. Maybe it's just still bothering him, and he's having some lingering pain. They want to take another look at it. It could be nothing more than that. But when you look, sometimes you find something. So I guess my question is to you. It's something we're going to have to watch for sure. But my question to you guys is: do you pivot? I mean, because it's kind of like a four-headed monster in that backfield, theoretically. So where do you guys pivot? Let's say Mostert's out. Like they find something, he's got a high ankle sprain or something. Where do you go right to Wilson?
I know which way Kyle's going to lean here. We all know. We all know.
Since Michael Hasty's on injured reserve, you can't pick him, but you may as well because you could get just as much points playing any of the other running backs. I would be more inclined to avoid, but thinking Wilson probably is the goal line back, so maybe there's touchdown upside there. If you're really desperate and really need a desperation flex, but I would try to avoid. I think
we're talking about a week or two ago. We saw Baltimore forget Lamar Jackson, but J.K. Dobbins went nuts on him. Justin Hill was half a thing.
Gus Edwards had 7 carries for 100 yards. So
there you go. So I mean, Jeff Wilson can do that. He's not that great, but he's big and he's explosive enough to be able to do that. I don't trust
Gus Edwards are actually probably pretty similar in terms of running style and athleticism. So I
would be staying away from Coleman because Coleman does nothing for me. I'd rather go to McKinnon. So at that point, we know that Jeff Wilson can be at least a goal line back, and we know punching them in against Dallas isn't the hardest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
So I would lean Wilson because of that.
Okay. There was one I did want to talk about that we've kind of been up and down with this a little bit. So Julio Jones missed another game with the same hamstring that he injured weeks ago. Out, came back. Now he's out in practice, and now he's out again. Same situation where do they even bring him back at this point? We have McCaffrey, same deal. Do they bring him back? Irrespective of his injury, do they actually bring him back? With Julio Jones, I don't know. This could be something where they actually shut him down for the rest of the year. And if they do, then Russell Gage, becomes very interesting as the guys that we were talking about that you pick up off waivers and can help win you a championship because he's fresh and he's taken over for a starting spot in a decent offense, more than decent offense, and did really well last week, including throwing a passing touchdown. So, there's some real potential there. And even if Julio Jones was they were in a playoff hunt or it was a playoff game, he could come out and gut it out. They might hold him out anyway because why not? I don't know. I just want to get your take on that, what you guys think. With McCaffrey too.
I think McCaffrey, there's no point them bringing him back for the amount of money that they paid him in the first year of his running back deal. They're not going anywhere. And I love watching Carolina play. They're so much fun. I like what they're building, and I hope they don't go quarterback route in the draft because Bridgewater with those 3 guys when they're fit, let alone with McCaffrey, we pretty much missed McCaffrey with an offseason with that team. Same with Bridgewater with Anderson, Moore, and Samuel. I can imagine that there's no need to get him out there. They're not that far behind Tampa. And I've watched the way Carolina play. They're so much further ahead than what I think Atlanta is. I love the defensive pieces. Why risk McCaffrey for this right now? There's just nothing in it for them to do that. That's a team I like watching. I think over the next year they're going to grow so well with a good draft and good free agency. I just wouldn't put him out there. You've got Mike Davis, just let him go for it. Let him have it for the rest of the year. And hey, listen, get him around for another year because you know he can. You don't need to go drafting a running back now, not after paying McCaffrey. So why not keep the majority of that team together and just let McCaffrey ride the year out? There's no need to bring him back. He'll want to, like Julio, right? Julio's going to want to get back.
Sure.
No, just stop. You're playing
you
for
guys,
nothing at this point.
You guys agree with that? You think that's the way they're going to play it?
Especially with McCaffrey, just because it seems like it's injury after injury. With Julio, it does seem like, okay, it's just the one hamstring injury. I feel like maybe you can have a better grasp of managing it. So I would say between the two, Julio probably has a better chance of appearing. But if I had to guess, I would probably agree with Dan that neither play, but a slightly better chance or maybe a bit more than slightly better chance for Julio. That was non-committal as ever, wasn't it?
Julio,
but
he only missed the one game, right? He only missed the one game between the Saints games because he played the Saints, got hurt, missed the Raiders game, came back and played the Saints again. So we know that Julio with a hamstring, the severity we don't really know. And he's good to miss 1 week. Like we know he's going to give it a go anyway. It feels like that. And I'm sure McCaffrey's trying to give it a go. I have no doubt. But that's a kid running into brick walls every day of the week. So let him. I wouldn't have him out there.
It's funny because week 3 he didn't play. Week 4 he played. I remember that against the Packers, and he left. He only played 21% of the snaps, and then missed week 5. Right, so that two games, but with one in between. If that pattern follows suit, he should play the next 5 weeks in a row. But at this point, not being in a playoff hunt anymore for Atlanta, I think they've been mathematically eliminated, or I think they might still technically
they
have
haven't been
hope.
mathematically eliminated yet.
Okay.
I think that with Carolina, the coach is set. He needs to have McCaffrey good for next year.
Yeah.
Atlanta, the coach is playing for his job. So as many wins as he can pile up is going to look better on his resume to get that job. So I don't think that either one of them should come back, but I think if either one would come back, it would be Julio, because even though they're not playing for a playoff spot, they're playing for the coaches. They're playing for Raheem's permanent status.
For what it's worth,
that's actually a good point.
Both Atlanta and Carolina, they're both 4-9.
Yeah.
So they need to win out to get to 7-9. And Minnesota and Chicago are at 6-7. The Giants are at, what are they at? 5-8. They're still a win ahead, and even San Fran's ahead of them. So we're talking about, aside from, they're on the same amount of wins as Dallas at this point, and no one's talking about Dallas going to the playoffs. And Dallas could technically get through, they
have better chance because they have 2 ways to get in.
I mean, so did Philly. Anyone in that division at the moment's a chance of getting through, but at least the Giants and Washington with 6 and 5 wins is still that one half a game ahead, kind of. Mm-hmm. They have to hope Minnesota lose out and Chicago lose out, and of course that can happen. But I don't think 32-year-old Julio Jones with dicey hamstrings is going to go out and play for a coach that's probably not going to be around in a year. I'd be surprised.
I think they like Raheem. I could see Julio playing for Raheem.
He looks like a good dude, and he looks like he's given them a spark. And that's great because it's clearly not coming from Dirk Cutter. But at this point, at 4 wins, they're better off continually losing. There's just no need.
I would agree with that. The only thing I want to add to this is that if Julio Jones does play, this is the exact type of where I'm talking about, where he goes out and they say, hey, just be a decoy, just run in straight lines all game. We're not going to throw you the ball. And he could conceivably do that. They might not throw him the ball. And, Calvin Johnson made a habit of doing this. And, he was basically running on 2 really injured ankles. And they just said, just run in a straight line and try to draw some defense. And you're not part of the game plan. They could easily do that as well. So it's something you really have to be wary about and watch how he looks in practice and what they're talking about leading up to the game, because the smart thing to do, I agree, is to keep him, inactivated and get him healthy, because obviously his hamstring is an issue, because it's been 4 weeks and he missed 2 out of the last 3 games with it. So he's still battling it. It's not completely healed, and it may not be healed until the offseason, but there's more at stake. There's coaches' jobs at stake. There's general managers. There's revenue. So there's more to it than just the football perspective. But that being said, they could run him out there and not have him be part of the game plan. And if you start him, it's the semifinals potentially, and you get left with empty pockets. That's not what I would, for anyone.
Yeah.
So, any more injuries to talk about? Do we want to mention Carson Wentz's bruised ego, or?
Oh, jeez, we'll leave that one to Dan.
Old splinters.
You want to take a victory lap on that one, Dan?
No.
I mean, the Eagles won, so I don't know how happy he is about that.
Yeah, I know.
Eagles, I don't really care about the Eagles winning. Listen,
I almost forgot they existed, right?
The only thing I've stood by this the whole time is that I don't deal well with a place talking about how bad their line has been when 70% of the lines in the league are just terrible at this point. I feel like it's his offensive line's bad. Okay, well, the Giants are playing 3 rookies and a right tackle at center. What do you want? We don't complain. Get on with it. Our receivers are bad. I mean, you drafted them in the 2nd round and 1st round. It's just one of those things. It's how many excuses can you make? It's terrible. It's just I hope he goes. I remember Jeff posted something about this during the week. Where do you think he should go? Legitimately, I think New Orleans would be perfect for him. You want to talk about Kamara and Michael Thomas and a line that is already set, that is running really well. Tell you what, Carson Wentz in New Orleans would be amazing. Amazing. I would love that. We're talking purely fantasy. He's great for fantasy football. I don't like the Eagles. That's nothing new. But we're talking about a guy who could be I'm hearing about people buying low on the guy. I would be holding him to see what happens, because someone is going to want to come after him. Because if you had the choice after Carson Wentz, Mitchell Trubisky, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Dwayne Haskins, you look at all these quarterbacks that could be had via trade this offseason, I know who I'd be going to first. I don't even think I'd be thinking twice about it. If you could go get him, you would.
Yeah.
You would. And if you're the Saints and you look at it, listen, we can go down the Taysom Hill route again tonight. I'm sure we will. But we're talking about a guy that still can't throw right. And you've got Carson Wentz that's there. And if you know that you can eat Carson Wentz is his contract's pretty bad, but Taysom Hill's is worth 6 next year? You tell me you can have a combination of Wentz and Hill for 35, 40 mil total between the two? I'd take that. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah,
but no, I don't
definitely
care. I hope Philly keep losing. And Jalen Hurts, I don't know who's not a Jalen Hurts fan. I think he's fantastic. I'm happy for the kid. He did great. He was fantastic, and they needed that spark, and they looked like they played for him.
I think the obvious tie I'm trying to make is the Frank Reich connection and Wentz to the Colts. If the 49ers decide to move on from Garoppolo, that could be one. If the Broncos decide maybe to replace Locke, that could be one too. I don't know if they have the cap space.
The thing is, you're looking at 2 teams with you look at the Colts. I don't care for their receivers at all. For a fantasy perspective, what do I care if he goes with Zach Pascal? Could care less. That doesn't appeal to me at all. And we're talking about a guy that's got Hightower at the moment. So
it would be a run-heavy approach, which maybe helps him. Maybe he runs more. I don't know. Mike Hicks says Darnold to the Saints to kind of mess with your theory. But
listen, that's all well and good, but you're talking about the Jets, and you know very well they ain't doing nothing with Darnold. They're going to keep him. You watch. And they're going to trade out.
As they should.
They're going to do something stupid. It's the Jets.
So let's touch on as interesting as the Jets are. Let's touch on a couple other things before we get to Monday night. We got a guy that is playing tonight, Austin Hooper. So he's got a neck injury. It looks like he's trending towards not playing tonight. That's the latest that I've heard. It'll be interesting. He was out. Okay.
Yesterday, yeah.
So he basically injured his neck in practice on Thursday. Didn't practice Saturday. Not really sure what's going on there, but the fact that he's not playing today is certainly not good. It'll be interesting to see who picks up the slack between Harrison Bryant and David Njoku, because one of them or both could potentially be viable if he misses again next week, because tight end is starting to get pretty thin. Kyle Rudolph is out with a foot injury, and there's a chance that could be a Liz Frank. We're not sure. Anytime you hear foot, and then they don't tell you anything, and it's not a break, then you got to worry about a Liz Frank. And he even put a goose egg up in week 13 when he was in there before he got hurt.
Yes, he did.
That Irv Smith, who seems to be doing better, the healthier of the two, who had a back injury, but actually played pretty well last week. He's kind of touchdown dependent, but we're getting to the point where it's getting really thin. And the last one I wanted to touch on is Noah Fant left the game in Denver with what's been described as an illness. Looks like it's not COVID, which is the good news, at least so far. He tested negative on Sunday, but he had some sort of what sounds like a gastrointestinal issue. So it could just be a gastrointestinal virus. They ruled as potentially food poisoning. That was just speculation. Something that I wanted to throw out there, that you can get multiple illnesses at the same time. Example, you could get a cold, you could get the flu, and you could COVID at the same time. They're different viruses, so definitely be affected by multiple things at once. And the first time I heard that, I was like, wait, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. And I was like, oh, wait a second. That could happen. So just because he's tested negative at this, that doesn't mean that he doesn't test positive at some point. But if that's all it is and he just had a stomach bug, he should be okay. It's kind of a wait and see. I wanted to leave you guys with kind of the COVID yellow alerts going into this week, where if you have these players on your team, this is where you want to be a little bit more vigilant, because these are the guys that could potentially, like the foxes in the hen house with these teams. So other players could continue to test positive, and you don't want to get left holding the bag on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday before your semifinal game. So Baltimore, been well documented. They've been having a lot of issues. The fact that they had Des Bryant test positive last week and they have guys coming back, they're still, things are still evolving there. Detroit had a player test positive, one of the defensive players, I believe. Miami with Gaskin, and they had Breida before that. And there could be more to come. And Carolina as well with DJ Moore. And so far, it looks like it's been okay. But those are still the ones that I'm on yellow alert on, as far as like there could be more to come. So just something else to keep in mind as we go into, the semifinals.
All right. Thank you. And I mean, Jim, and you mentioned players coming back tonight. That includes Mark Andrews and Willie Snead, both returning from the COVID list tonight. So
really interested to see what Mark Andrews. Really interested to see what he does tonight, because we're all learning about this as we go, and watching these guys come back from this thing, which can be pretty much a devastating injury as far as you out, and even the deconditioning. It's like if you're laid up with this thing, you're not doing anything for 2 or 3 weeks, other than maybe shuffling to the bathroom and the kitchen, and then taking 10 minutes to rest. So deconditioning is a component of that. The lingering effects of the illness could be at play, or he'd be fine. He could have been asymptomatic and he goes out and he lights it up. So, James Conner didn't look great coming back from this. It's understandable in this context. I'm interested to see what Andrews does. And the more of these players that come back, Snead as well, that come back and we can see what they can do, we learn more about this and kind of how injury analysis evolves. Things happen, and the more they happen, you can kind of plan, and that's what we do. So this is it. This is our last show for the year, right?
Gosh.
I think we'll do one more. Yeah, we'll do one more. There's a Monday night game next week.
Okay.
So,
we never stop.
You're not getting out of this that easily.
We never
stop.
No. It doesn't end, James. It doesn't end. Fantasy football
it'll be great.
End.
We get the Steelers next week again, too. How familiar?
That'll be perfect. So that's great. So then we'll see what happens tonight, and then we'll chop it all up again next week. But I'll leave you guys to it, and just want to say thank you again. It's always a pleasure to see you guys. Whoever is out there, if you have any questions, you can find me on Twitter at TFSDoc. Shoot me an email, the doc at thefantasysportsdoc.com. And just in time for Christmas and the fantasy championships, not to mention basketball, the baseball offseason, and everything else. If you're really interested in getting a lot better at injury analysis, check out my book. On Amazon. Injuries suck, but your fantasy team doesn't have to. And I hope you guys check it out. Thanks for all the support. And fantasy football never ends. Isn't that true? So I'll leave you guys to it. Have a great Thanks for everything, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Doc.
All right.
Bye.
Good night, guys.
The doc is out. And the game is in. I mean, well, not quite yet, but Ravens Browns NFC North, because we haven't done enough NFC North games apparently this year. We keep having more.
We're just in the North, right? AFC North, NFC North. Is there a Ravens?
We kept having Bears.
Ravens, Steelers, or Bears game we haven't? We've covered everything. I feel like me and Trubisky, we could be friends right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Wouldn't that be enemy lines? Oh, never mind. Yeah, no.
Brutal. Fantasy doesn't end. Mike's right. Fantasy football never ends. We got draft prep. What are you talking about? We got draft prep coming up.
Well, we got a Monday night game here first. So first off, I mean, I'm just going to come right off the bat and say it. I was surprised to see the Ravens favored. I mean, favored by 3, especially. I figured if either team was going to be favored, it wouldn't be 1.5, 2. But I think the Browns win this game. So that's how I'm going to approach it.
Spicy. That's spicy.
Yeah, they've been a really good team. The defense has played solid and just has gotten healthier, getting better. The run game is pretty deadly. I think the run game is going to be kind of a thing for both teams today. So the way the Browns have been doing it, it's tough to say that they're not the better run team.
Listen, have the Browns been that good, or have they been playing Jacksonville, Philadelphia, Houston, and Cincinnati?
They played the Colts really well.
They lost. They beat the Titans, and that was a fun one, but they still had 35 dropped on them. And they haven't played the Colts since week 5. They lost to Pittsburgh. They beat Cincinnati 37-34. They lost to the Raiders. 7-10, and then they had those wet weather games, right? So 16-6 with Raiders, 7-10 Houston, 17-22 Philly. That was that 3-week stretch. They beat the Jags by 2, 27-25. That's a Mike Glennon-led team.
To be fair, the Jags have almost beat like 3 playoff teams in the Vikings and Packers.
Right.
There's something there with the Jags. I don't think that we could just
that's still points to get had on
anymore.
Yeah.
I'm also biased there, of course, in that opinion. I don't want to say the Packers almost lost to the Jags.
They haven't had more than a 1-score win. Maybe the Colts 23-32. That was week 5.
Yeah, but you can't say the Ravens have been playing lights out either. I
will say this with Baltimore, and I agree with you both on that very, very much. We're talking about a team that has been dysfunctional and disrupted through their health. 23 players on the COVID list this year. We're talking about a team that, we didn't know if Mark Andrews was playing last week. We didn't know who was going to be the quarterback last week. And then they played on the short week with Thanksgiving. It was RG3 and Trace McSorley. Right, and that was a Tuesday or a Wednesday and a Monday. They've been I feel bad for Pittsburgh because they've been the butt end of all this, but Baltimore's been through the ringer with this sort of garbage too. And I think they've had a full week's rest where they played Tuesday last week. It's Monday night now, and they've got a game at against Cleveland that is must win. That is must win because that AFC is tight. It is crazy how tight the AFC are. Wild card chase is for the 3 teams that are on the back end of that. It's getting away from everyone at this point. So I don't know. I kind of like Baltimore with a team that looks healthy. They get Snead back, which is a big addition because he does a lot of that work underneath to free up Brown, to free up Andrews. I don't know. They get
on the team in red zone targets.
Yeah, and they also get look. It's understated, but they get Mark, and they also get Mark Ingram back tonight as well. So as much as we like the run game for Cleveland, which is amazing, they can't stop the pass for their life. And if you're telling me they get Snead, they get and Andrews back this week, it's only good things for a few of them, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it's the skepticism of Jackson being able to take advantage. I know the one thing, just a quick example with the Bengals, right? It's, oh my God, it's Dallas. Look what they allow everything to the run. But the Bengals didn't have the offensive line to take advantage, and then the running backs fumbled too much.
Yeah,
that was on the backs themselves.
They benched
the offensive line really wasn't creating it.
It was crazy. They benched Bernard after the first play of the game, and then the next thing happens, Travion Williams does it as well, and he's been hooked for smart JP, right? It's madness. Like that whole machismo for coaches dropping running backs for fumbling once is just madness. It's insane. Like, okay, it's the first play of the game. He's your best player right now. Stop it. What are you doing? But
I think Taylor's having issues anyway, from what I hear. So
He probably was as well, but like, he's that much better than P. Ryan and Williams. It was a sad thing to see happen in that instance. Also, it killed my DraftKings team, but we're not going to talk about
and so just to say that, so I think that's, again, because knowing that the Ravens' strength is the run game, but that's also the Browns' defensive strength, I feel like they may not have what it takes to overcome that. So, yeah, I think of that with the Browns. So I'm taking the Browns and taking the points there. Gladys, what are you feeling on that spread?
I'm taking the Browns, but I'm not taking the points. I suck at taking points. But I think I think the Browns win. I honestly think Baltimore traveling to Cleveland. It's a completely different team than what Baltimore saw in week 1 where they trounced them. Stefanski's going to just run the ball down their throats. I see the Browns winning. Sorry, Dan.
So Dan, you see the Ravens winning, but do you like them as 3-point favorites?
Oh yeah, no, I will take the Ravens -3. Listen, it's very rare that one of us strays away from a home underdog on a primetime game. Very rare that we do this. We're very habitual creepers, creatures, the three of us. I kind of like Lamar. I like Lamar Jackson this week to kind of go nuts. Him in Cleveland, he gets on very well with Cleveland. He loves playing Cleveland. They can't stop him.
They were one of the only teams to hand him a loss last season.
This doesn't mean that they stopped him.
No,
do you know what I mean? That's one of those things.
Pretty sure that the Browns offense scored like 40 points that game. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, we're talking about a guy who is on the outside looking in, the former MVP, and he's playing Cleveland, who are a little bit starky at this point. I got a feeling Ravens are going to go out and go nuts this week, and I really don't. You know how I feel about this. I really don't like going with the away team on prime time as favorites. I really don't like doing it, but I kind of feel like it's a different story with the Ravens at this point. This is a must-win game for them. It's a conference game that they need to get ahead of because Pittsburgh just smashed them all over the place. I kind of like this one for the Ravens, and I like that they got their team back. And I don't know. I kind of feel like Cleveland. Listen, I think I was the one that brought it up last week or a week or two ago. No one's talking about the Browns being 8-3 or whatever it was. And no one really looked at them like that in that manner. But again, I understand the weather situation and the low-scoring games and that was happening to them. But man, they're barely putting teams away. You know, if you're struggling against Jacksonville, whose defense is just trash, Baltimore's a different animal. And you're talking about missing Austin Hooper, who's a big piece of that as well. You're hoping it's either Njoku or Bryant, Rashad Higgins, or Donovan Peoples-Jones. They're not going to have a problem in the passing game, I don't think, tonight. So you're really just focusing on the run. Baltimore have been a bit iffy, it feels like, but getting Calais Campbell back is a big, big deal. So I think Baltimore will handle them tonight. I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think they'll get the win, and I'll take the -3 with Baltimore. Again, I normally don't like away teams as favorites, and normally, especially prime time, I really don't like doing it, but this week I will because I think Cleveland's in for a bit of a shock tonight.
All right. And now you brought up a few stats, Dan, of the show sheet, and one really interesting one. Both running backs for the Browns have more rushing yards than the top receiver has receiving yards.
That's crazy, right?
That may influence some decisions we make as well today.
Yeah, so that's obviously Jarvis Landry, who's been their top receiver at this point. He's got 660 he's got. And we're looking at Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb that have just torn it up on the ground. So, you know, comparatively, and I've looked at this before, you look at the passing stats between Baker Mayfield and some of just on the outside. I'm not talking about deep analytics here. That's not what I'm ever going to give you. But we're talking about Baker Mayfield and Lamar Jackson not being that far away. You know, both averaging around 27 pass attempts a game. And you'd think with Lamar Jackson, you'd think that would be lower. It's really not. Mayfield's not really going out having to sling it that much. They're getting it done on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And again, you know, 7 intercepts in 5 career games against Baltimore, and he's got no Odell Beckham, no Austin Hooper. So I can't see him. I don't even think he's going to get over that 27 pass attempts close enough today, Mayfield. So I don't think he's even going to get that far. So we'll see what happens, though. Interesting.
So let's start talking about these props then. I mean, you got Mayfield at 233.5 passing yards, 2.5 touchdowns. So just quickly, I'm also feeling under for sure. I don't think 233 does seem high, especially again thinking the way the Browns win is to run the ball a lot. So.
If I can, just to go back to this as well, Lamar Jackson last 3 games against Cleveland, 3 passing touchdowns each time. 247, 238, and 275. And they won 38-6 this year, 31-15 last year as well. And they lost 25-40. So he's had over 235 each time, and he's thrown for 3 touchdowns each time.
You can't compare last year's Cleveland team to this year's Cleveland team.
Oh, no, that's not fair either. I know, I get that too, but I'm comparing Lamar Jackson to what he's been able to do as well, and he did that this year as well.
And so, okay, do you like his 205 for that line there for
I actually
Jackson?
do. I do.
Okay. So Gladys, just well, actually, if you want to say something else, go ahead. But do you want to mention like either the quarterback passing yard lines, if you like either? Are you agree with us that Mayfield for sure under?
Mayfield under.
Yeah.
Jackson under. But real quick on Hicks's question, Chubb or Dobbins? It's got to be Chubb, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think in terms of
ground,
because the question is who will do better on the ground. If you ask me who has more total scrimmage yards, I could see Dobbins getting more receptions and
right. That. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But on the ground,
rushing, because the question is on the ground specifically, I think it's Chubb.
Yep. This is where we're at.
And compare the lines, right? And I mean, it's massive, Matt. I don't know if you. I mean, if you're thinking it's close, maybe that is something to exploit. But we've got Nick Chubb at 97.5 rushing yards. This was receiving yards. Sorry, Dobbins at 58.
No, that's rush yards. That's
it is rush. Okay, so 58.5 rush yards for Dobbins. So we're talking about a 40-yard difference. By the way, this is all on Thrive Fantasy. You can sign up at thrivefantasy.com. Use the code Armchair, and you get a matching deposit up to $50 between 20 and 50. So whatever you put on, use the code Armchair, and Thrive will double. We'll match that for you, and you get double what you put in and then initial offer. So again, thrivefantasy.com. But yes, Chubb, 97.5 rush yards. Dobbins, 58.5 rush yards. So, I mean, clearly the way the Vegas line's set up, Mike, is you're clearly they're favoring Chubb in that regard. So, again, if you think it's close, maybe that's something to exploit with Dobbins. Now, Gladys, do you like either of those running backs for those yards?
I like Chubb over 97.5 rushing yards. Yep, I said it. You heard it, Dan.
There it is. I like it.
It makes me feel great about because I put in some prop lines earlier on Thrive, and they had Chubb down at 80.5 yards. So and then now you see this at 97, and that's still a smash there. So 80 was very clear. To me, I thought that too. I thought when I saw 80.5 initially, I thought, oh, okay, that's yes. 97, I was a little hesitant, but
I saw that too, and I was like 97.5. I was like,
I do like Hunt's better, to be honest. Between the two, Chubb at 97 or Hunt at 43.5. I love that for Kareem Hunt.
Yeah,
I looked at it. Only 3 times this year he's failed to reach 46 rushing yards.
And that's what they're going to do is they're just going to give them the ball all game, no matter even if Baltimore looks like they're stopping them. Stefanski's not going to veer away from that.
No,
I can't see him. He has to win this game too.
I kind of felt like of all of the things in terms of rushing, I kind of like Chubb over on touchdowns. I know that's the cheap way out. I hate betting on touchdowns. I hate betting on touchdowns. I hate doing it. But talking about Chubb at over point half a touchdown, like he's going to punch one in. That's happening because I'm not sure Landry's going to get free as much as we think. If they're going to go that route, passing touchdown, kind of tend to think it'll be Harrison Bryant. Or it'll be a big boy. I think Rashad Higgins is a guy that I'll look to as well in terms of his own opportunity. But I kind of feel like if they get even close to that, they're just going to hammer. They're going to hammer Chubb into that wall as much as they can until he breaks through. And if anyone's got the ability this year to just break through anything, it's going to be Nick Chubb. So
yeah, regardless of tough defense, right?
97.5 was a bit rich for me. I think I'd lean under just slightly. I think 85 to 89 I'd be happy with.
Okay, so again, the touchdown being the big one, and I think we all love especially Kareem Hunt with his rush yards. 43.5 does seem like that, and that is really low. But how do we feel about Dobbins? Because I don't think 58.5 is too high. Like I definitely wouldn't pick the under. I'm not sure. That might be one I'd be more likely to ignore, but I could see myself taking the over there, thinking that he could break off some
if I can, I think I only saw like Mark Ingram at like 19 rush yards, so I don't think they're even factoring him in for that much work anyhow. So if that's the case, I kind of like Dobbins at 58.5. I think James Robinson had 120 yards on him last week. For Jacksonville? I don't even want to begin to think about what Derrick Henry had.
You know, you're talking about teams that have.
Henry didn't do well at
all. They have.
But I kind of think if someone's going to get the 60 yards on that team, it's going to be him. And if I get James Robinson's he's on his own island in Jacksonville, and so is Derrick Henry in Tennessee. I get that, but at this point, Dobbins looks fantastic, and I can't see them straying away from him in a game this important. I don't think now's the time. My issue with Baltimore this year has been that backfield with how, like, when they were all healthy, they were just like giving each other like 5, 6, 7 touches at a time. It looked like a mess. It was like what you see from Tampa with the passing game, how they brought in Brown, and they didn't really know who they were going to. It kind of looked cluttered. I kind of feel like Dobbins is staking his claim as that guy at this point, and it's up to Edwards and Ingram to kind of get that secondary role. And
I think it's like
Edwards has done well. He's done well. I think he's been great for them this year for the role that he's played. But I think at this point it's Dobbins first. And if he gets even over that 10, 12 touches, he's going to make the most of that. And he's going to get to that.
Don't forget about Lamar.
Double-digit carries.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Lamar's going to have a big play in that. But I don't know. I kind of feel like Lamar's got one of those passing games up his sleeve today. I don't know why. I can't shake it. It's coming. I feel like over that 205 and 18.5 is coming. I think he's been waiting for these guys to turn back up. And that includes Dobbins. He's going to start chucking it to him a bit more as well, I think. So we'll see.
Also, I was curious, did you find one for Jackson rush yards?
No, there wasn't there on Thrive when I was looking earlier.
I looked earlier. It's gone now. I think, what did I have it at? I had it at 61.5 for rush yards.
Over.
So higher than Dobbins. I don't like, though. I mean, he got 94 last week coming off of the COVID positive test. But exactly, right? So I'm not thinking, because I mean, and against Cleveland week 1, he had 45 on the ground. So they managed to hold him.
Yeah.
Well, and actually, it's funny. This season, Jackson's only hit that 61.5, at least 62, 4 times only. So more than almost double, like seven games without it, right? So that's not what I'm necessarily willing to bank on, just because Dobbins is getting more work. I know it's only a difference of 3 yards, but yeah, I think it's massive there in terms of the guaranteed opportunity with Dobbins. Because I mean, again, if it does turn to a pass-heavy approach, suddenly Jackson isn't running for those yards. So it's so tough to go under on Jackson there too. But what are you thinking about that line, Gladys? 61.5 rush yards for Jackson.
So he rushed for 100 yards the 2 games before. Is New England the one that held him to 55 yards? It was the New England game, right? Where he only rushed for 55? But the 2 games before that, 51 and then 94. So, yeah, I would go. It's hard to go under on him because you know he's going to break one off like he did last week. But I think Myles Garrett might, if he shadows him, I'm going to go under. I'm saying it, under.
He's been under 50 yards.
If I had to pick one, I'd go under as well.
He's been under 50 yards rushing twice this year. One was the Cleveland week 1, and the other one was week 5 and Cincinnati. How about that?
Against the Titans,
so there's 5 weeks there where he's gotten more than 50, but less than 62.
Titans, and he rushed for 55 against New England. So
under 50. I'm saying under 50. I'm saying under 50. He's only done
it. 65, isn't it?
No, that's what I'm saying. So we're talking about a floor of 50 at least.
Yeah, so it seems like he'll get to 50, but will he get to 60 is the question, right? Like it's.
I feel like
that's where it's tricky.
That was obviously, again, it was Dallas because they're bad, but that's the best that they looked like they were getting him available to run. And they had no one available. Remember, Des Bryant was pulled before the start of the game. There was no Willie Snead, no Mark Andrews. He had no choice but to run. that was the first time this year it looked like they let him. I know that sounds weird to say, but they've kind of been reserved with how they've let him kind of use his legs a bit more, and that says a lot considering he's had less than 50 only twice. Just for what it's worth, other bookie sites have him at about 65.5. So if that's the case, the higher it goes, the under it seems. That's what I think, right? So 60 seems about right on the money. I think if he has that one breakaway run, we talk about Marquise Brown all the time when we've covered every Ravens game this year. He just needs that one catch to go for 40. And it feels like that with Lamar Jackson. He just needs to get away once to go for 30 to 35. And the rest he's getting 7 or 8 per hit.
I guess my worry about Jackson is the game that he came back from COVID was against Dallas, which they're not touching him. They're not hitting him. They're not anything.
Ever.
Cleveland's going to hit him. And
they will.
He said that coming back from COVID, he felt like he was just starting all over again. So if he gets hit really hard a couple of times, wind knocked out of him, I don't know that he's going to want to rush for 65 yards or more. So that's why I think you're right. I think it's going to be a passing game, like a lot of dump-offs to Andrews and a lot of dump-offs to Willie Snead.
Yeah. Although to that, does he really want to be standing in the pocket with Myles Garrett
pass rushing?
That could be just and then if that's the case, I think Dobbins then smashes that line because he's just going to hand it off. Maybe Dobbins sees 20 carries if that's the case, like where they're really afraid to have Jackson take hits and they're just going to try and run it down the throat with Edwards, Dobbins, and Ingram.
I don't think Lamar Jackson would be afraid of Myles Garrett because he can always get away. I think that's the distinct difference between Jackson and everyone else that really comes up against Cleveland. If you're Mike Glennon, you'd be petrified. If you're Ryan Tannehill, to an extent, you're petrified because you know that you've got limited chances to get away from a guy like Myles Garrett in that moment, in that second. But Lamar Jackson, he can get away pretty frequently. I'm just looking at this now. My math isn't great, but we're looking at those over-under yards sort of in that regard. It looks like 14 is the magic number for Jackson to hit 60 yards. So if he hits that 14 attempt mark, he's going over. So it seems like every time he hits that 13, it's like 58, 55, 51. But anything over that, he kind of gets there. So 14 loosely, very, very loosely, is the magic marker there for Jackson on rush and rush attempts. So that's where I'm at.
And, okay, moving away from rushing to receiving now, quickly run through these receivers. So we got Jarvis Landry. Some of his props include receptions 5.5, receiving yards 60.5. Rashard Higgins 47.5 for receiving yards. Marquise Brown 3.5 reception, 51.5. Snead they have coming back at 37.5, and Mark Andrews at 50.5. Also half a touchdown for Higgins, half a touchdown for Andrews.
For what it's worth, Marquise Brown, since we started this with Thrive, has come up by about 15 receiving yards since we began, and that was about 2 weeks ago. So, and we didn't like him then at 40 yards either, right? I think we can collectively say.
Depends on the matchup, but this again, we're talking about maybe being more of a pass-heavy approach. Is this the game?
That was Pittsburgh, right? The first time? It was Pittsburgh, and he had that one receiving. He had it with McSorley, right? That one touchdown.
Yeah, that was McSorley.
Yeah, so that's when we started this, and before that touchdown, he was nowhere near the receiving yards. So even then, and that was like one of the last plays of the game, right? With McSorley, it felt like it was in the fourth quarter at least. My memory's a little spotty because it was a Tuesday afternoon and I wasn't at work. But I don't know, 51.5, even for him. Yeah, right. I wasn't there. What are you talking about? 51.5 for even Brown, like that keeps coming up, but those receptions keep staying the same. So I'm okay to take him with receptions because he keeps hitting that 3-4 reception mark like he does every week, but the yards keep coming up because he's breaking them away, and that's just boosting him through. So I'm going under on yards, but I'll take the receptions at 3.5.
It's funny because
I'm probably wrong.
Well, having Brown ahead of Andrews, I think, is curious. I mean, 51.5 for Brown, 15.5 for Andrews. I mean,
they got to be conservative about Andrews and his health. And
I think that's what it is.
That's it.
Yeah,
they can't. They're not going to come out and say this guy that's had COVID and he's been missing for nearly 3-4 weeks is going to come out and go 65 yards, a touchdown, and 5 receptions. They just can't do it to themselves.
I mean,
They get
kept Brown ahead of him though. Like they could have kept Brown at 49.5, right, just to kind of keep that point of Andrews being ahead. But they purposely put Brown ahead of Andrews. I don't know.
I think they've seen the box score for Marquise Brown the last couple of weeks, and they've gone, no one's going to look at what happened. They're going to check they're going to go to Pro Football Reference. They're going to say, oh, he had 130 yards, very good. But like little did they know he had about 25 before that one breakout run. Like that's very well what most people are doing when they do these sorts of things. If they boost Mark Andrews up, even 50.5 seems a lot to me. And if they were to put him at what he's normally at, around that 60, 65 mark, everyone would smash unders and they would get cooked. So Andrews touchdowns, yes, he has decent success against Cleveland with the touchdown department, I feel. But yards, I'm kind of fading him on that. I hate the idea of betting on touchdowns. It's not something that I've ever been really good at. But for me, Andrews a touchdown.
Twice today already.
I know.
This week you're going against Tennessee. You're taking the road favorites. You're taking the over. Taking touchdowns.
Come on, man.
Is it the C League? Like, they changed you? Like, what's going on, man?
It's the line. Someone take that glass away from him.
We'll get back to receiving. Gladys, what are some of your favorite props, either over or under on any of these receivers?
And let's stick with Baltimore. I don't like Marquise Brown. I mean, it was with McSorley, and it's not with Lamar throwing him. I don't like Andrews. I would go under on Andrews just because the last time he played was November 22nd. And I understand that they're like athletes and they're conditioned and stuff, but like Lamar said, he said it was like starting all over again. So, and you're talking about someone who has type 2 diabetes too, that he has to control?
Type 1. He's type
Willie
1.
Snead, I would go over.
I love Willie Snead over 37.5.
Willie Snead, I'm going over a lot.
I'll say my favorite receiver prop's actually probably Jarvis Landry at 60.5. I mean, he's kind of the number one target there. And I think he'll see enough volume to reach that 60.5 receiving yards.
You're going over?
Over on Landry. I think for the most part, I want to go after the running backs, a lot of these props, but he's maybe the one receiver I'm willing to go for. I know it's the highest out of all of them, but I mean, in 3 of the last 5 games, he's hit it. And against the Ravens week 1, he barely hit it. He had 61. He literally just hit it. And I think back then though, Beckham was there, targets not necessarily garnering. He's now with Hooper out, I think he's gonna just funnel a ton of volume. And even if he's not efficient, he'll still get that 61.
We're talking about the Tennessee game where Mayfield had how many attempts? That was like his most attempts in like forever, right? Tennessee, he had 33 attempts. Jarvis Landry had 10 targets, and he had 62 yards.
Yeah, it's not very, is it? I like the idea of Landry receptions at 5.5. I think we can offer Landry receptions because they could throw 12 targets at him, especially without Hooper, and that's very well good. He could go for 7 receptions at 50 yards, and that's where he's at. So, and how much success he's going to have against the Ravens in the past, I don't know. So I think I tend to lean Landry receptions at 5.5. Even Rashard Higgins at 47.5. I don't like that at all. All very well and good, but I think it's more Kareem Hunt. And it's a shame that they didn't have his receiving yards down either, because I would be all over that with Kareem Hunt. Yards. I'd be about that life. But
the Ravens secondary is actually good. I mean, they're really good.
I know, and that's why I like looking at Landry 60.5 yards without Beckham. And I understand the opportunity to volume is there, but I don't think they're going to be overly concerned about, who cares and so what? Like, it's Landry in the passing game and nothing else, because stopping tight ends I don't think is a real big problem for the Ravens. Harrison Bryant has been quite a nice surprise this year, I believe. He's done okay. Like, you look at and Cole Kmet's sort of come along, and you've seen a little bit more of Adam Troutman, a little bit more. So they're starting to get there, but they haven't really done too much this year. Especially last year, had Fant, Hawkinson, all that sort of stuff. But unless Harrison Bryant's getting like a red zone target, he's not going to do anything. If they have to chase the Ravens, I don't want to be relying on Jarvis Landry and his 3 yards a catch to get me anywhere. That's not going to happen.
If they have to chase the Ravens, I don't want to rely on Baker Mayfield. If he feels,
I don't know. Like again, like it's a shame. It's a shame that I don't see his rushing yards as well, because that kid can scramble when he has to as well. But it's also one of those things as well. Like I'm sitting there thinking, like Stefanski won't let him air it out if he doesn't have to. They just won't. They don't. So if the Ravens get off to, if we just started now, if the Ravens get off to a hot start, Cleveland get the ball to start the game. If the Ravens get off to a start, the Browns are in all sorts of trouble, I think, because they do not match up well with the Ravens. Not without Hooper, not without Beckham. I don't think. I do like Cody Parkey at 5.5 points. We can get on the kickers. Hey, Jeff, how you going? Justin Tucker, 6.5 points. I think the kickers are looking pretty good tonight. We'll see.
Apparently, we reached our quota because they talked quite a bit about kickers on the Thursday show, and Jeff wasn't too happy, so we probably shouldn't talk too much about it.
Listen, I don't think while we're sponsored by Thrive, I think he just needs to change the name of his company. I'm not someone that has a lot of good ideas, but while Thrive offers kicking overs and unders, I think Jeff needs to weigh up what's important. That's sponsorship money or playing kickers in fantasy football. I
won like my first round with Koo. He had 31 points. Atlanta's kicker, not this week, but last week.
I lost Zane Gonzalez this week, and I rolled Graham Gano, and I got 1 point. I was better off with Zane Gonzalez. Thanks, Graham. You're killing me. You know what? I'll go to Old Faithful. Graham Gano, kicking number 5 for the year. I think I'll get on this. No.
Parkey 5.5. That's 2 field goals, right?
Yeah.
If you think he can get 2 field goals. Tucker's at 7.5 or 6.5. Wasn't he 7.5 a couple weeks ago and didn't reach it because they just
dump off,
just didn't kick field goals? Like it was just a couple point afters. Where now it's down to 6.5. 2 field goals a point after could do.
Running. It's a run game.
Yep.
Right. I think we all invested in the run game.
No, sorry, I think we're gonna. That's David and Joe. Is that Njoku? I can't see. I just saw that. That looked like Landry. First reception, 14 yards. He's almost there. Everybody, get on Jarvis Landry yards.
Yeah, if there's still time, if you can still bet on it.
Get on Jarvis Landry yards. Yeah, do the right thing. Sorry, I couldn't see the numbers. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, okay, fair enough. He stepped back, he dumped it off to Landry, and he ran.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta be kidding me.
More than 3 yards a reception.
Oh, sorry. They also got Brandon Williams back tonight. We didn't mention that because they missed him in the run game. And with Campbell and Williams missing, they looked absolutely atrocious. Yeah. To see him back, that's a big deal because now you can let Ngakoue get on the outside too now. Imagine that Calais Campbell with Ngakoue on the outside. That's just insane.
Yeah. Have we seen that before?
Yeah, right. Jacksonville. Yeah, that happened. Imagine what that would look like. Well, we did.
Yeah, I know. Imagine if you could have those 2 players. Why not keep those 2 players?
They nearly got Blake Bortles.
What do they get? What do they get? A third and a fourth for both of them?
Oh, that's ridiculous.
That's not even like those 2 picks is not enough for Campbell alone. Yes. And yeah, sure. You get a third for Ngakoue, fleece the Vikings, especially if he makes the Pro Bowl. It moves up to a second, I think. That's awesome.
There's always that one guy in your league that gives off the worst trades ever. Owen, if you're listening, I'm talking about you. I'm directly talking about you.
Just based on the last couple of back row Giants, I figured Izzy might have sold really low on Justin Jefferson or something. But
he's heard enough of me about that. I haven't let that down for 2 weeks. I've been giving it to.
Yeah, I know. I've been listening. Back row Giant show, everyone. It's great. Check it out.
I couldn't believe when he said that. He's like the 5th most.
I do agree with you. I was screaming the same thing. Oh my God, Dan's right.
Izzy's my boy. I work with Izzy. We're at work. We have a bit of fun on a Friday afternoon. I think he's a little loose by that point in the afternoon as well. We'll say that much. But
that'll work. Yeah. Okay.
Landry just passed one. Oh my God.
Well, luckily that doesn't count for his receiving yards if he went under.
He just threw it to Chubb. There we go. Nick Chubb receiving yards now over.
How come that just happened here? Like you're telling me a play that I just now saw.
You're in Mountain Time. That doesn't count, right? You're a little delayed. See where I am in New York, we're actually further in front of Cleveland, so everything's happening before they even know it.
Wow. Okay.
So the Ravens defense is really caught off guard by that one. Then, if it happened,
you got to expect they're gonna. I'm telling. They're gonna do something on a punt tonight, Cleveland. I can feel it. It's in the air, isn't it?
Like when they're punting, or like on a punt.
Yeah. They're gonna do something on their punt,
like some fake punt, or
they're gonna do something stupid. You can feel it. You can feel it.
Okay, well that's Dan's prediction. Is a stupid punt play as a prop? We can half a stupid punt play. Oh yeah.
0.05. Let me just clear that up with Izzy. I'll find out now, and I'll see what he thinks. It's all right. Tucker over 6.5 points. Yeah, I think so.
I think we're past the point where people can put in props, but yeah, thanks for listening, everyone. The game is clearly on, so if you can still somehow put props, keep doing it, of course.
Since we're behind everybody out here in the mountains, maybe we can.
That's all good.
Yeah. Anyway, again, really appreciate everyone for watching, listening, asking questions. Really appreciate the Fantasy Sports Talk, Jim, for always being here as always. But we've got. I'll plug you both the co-hosts. That sounded wrong. Dan, I'll start with you. So I already mentioned the Back Row Giants pod, and now we get to the B League Says. That's his Twitter account.
You do it well, Carl. You do it well. You steer in the right direction, buddy. Just steer.
You see, it's funny. I was great at the start of the episode, and slowly just getting worse and worse. Like maybe the Browns will. Who knows? Started off so great. Gladys is at Never Enough GLT. If you have any complaints about anything I said, send a says. Tell me all about it.
It's gonna be the last time we see you, right? The way you're going.
We do have a show next week, right?
Oh, listen. We got to steal this game. Who have they got next week?
The Bengals.
What?
We can't catch a trick.
So Dan may not be here next week.
Oh, damn.
More AFC North.
It's a Bears game, it's a Steelers game, it's a Steelers game, it's a Ravens game, or the Rams. We get stuck with those guys, the Rams. Like anyone.
I wish we had the Rams. I miss the Rams.
Give me like a Chargers game. Give us something to sink our teeth into. Give us something fun. Oh my God.
You're gonna love it.
I bet. I'm going to check this down. I'm going to bet we're going to close out with an Eagles game. And if we do, I am just going to disappear. You will never see me again. I'm going to find this out.
I don't know that there's a Monday game in week next week.
Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots.
16? I don't know if they still do week 16 Monday.
Week 16, we got a Bills game.
December 28th. Buffalo Bills, New England Patriots.
Oh my God. Let's talk about Jared Stidham.
We're so excited to have this show with you folks. Thank you for watching.
If it wasn't for Thrive, I'd be cooked. Everyone, just remember, please, when you sign up, use the code Armchair, and they will match anything from $20 up to $50. I'll put the plug in. Thank you, Thrive, for keeping me interested in football.
I'm really tired in there.
Deal with the Patriots. Chubb touchdown. We're over. Thank you.
All right, there you go. Well, and you know what? I think the show's over too. So thank you all.
Quit calling plays before I see them.
It's got go back.
I got nothing here. I can't see anything. So.
All right, I'll leave you guys. Bye.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you next Monday.
Bye.